Good evening and welcome to NTD News. I'm Stephanie Cox. Here are today's top stories. Speculation around the Atlanta shooting has some wondering if it was racially motivated. The suspect revealed to police what led to his attack. The Homeland Security Secretary spoke before Congress for the first time today. Many pressed him on immigration, but Mayorkas declined to say there's a crisis at the border, sticking to his answer that the Biden administration is taking the right path. Today is the deadline to collect signatures for California's recall effort against the governor. It's now surpassed 2 million signatures. Parents are suing a Virginia County school board. They claim the new admissions practices discriminate against Asian students in the name of diversity. And apparent crackdown on online privacy and free speech. China bans U.S. messaging app Signal. The app allows for encrypted messaging between users. That and more on NTD News. Police are investigating the motive behind the Atlanta shooting spree that killed 8 people last night. They say the shooting is not racially motivated. NTD's Allison Lee has the latest.
Shootings at 3 different massage parlors in the Atlanta area took the lives of 8 people on Tuesday night, including 6 Asians and 2 Caucasians. 21-year-old suspect Robert Aaron Long was taken into custody and interviewed. The suspect told police that the shooting is not racially motivated.
He claims that these, and as the chief said, this is still early, but he does claim that it was not racially motivated. He apparently has an issue, what he considers a sex addiction, and sees these locations as something that allows him to go to these places, and it's a temptation for him that he wanted to eliminate.
Cherokee County Sheriff says the suspect likely frequented the massage parlors in the past, but he says it's still too early to determine whether there was racial motivation.
It may be targets of opportunity. Again, we believe that he frequented these places in the past.
The suspect also revealed he had planned to travel to Florida and attack locations there related to the porn industry.
It sounds to me like these locations, he sees them as an outlet for him, that something that he shouldn't be doing, and that an issue with porn, and that he was attempting to take out that temptation.
A business owner near one of the massage parlors told NTD he saw police cars crowding the place and felt terrible about the attack.
I think the city definitely needs to look into what's going on with all the gun violence. This is not the first time. The violence has just been getting, crime has been getting worse and worse, and I think the mayor needs to do something about it.
Captain Baker says the suspect claims no political or religious motivation for the shooting. He took full responsibility for the attacks and did not resist arrest. Reporting by Allison Lee, NTD News.
And today on Capitol Hill, Secretary of Homeland Security Mayorkas made his first public appearance before the House. The secretary called domestic extremism the most serious and lethal threat to the U.S., but many Congress members persisted in questioning him on the Biden administration's immigration policy. NTD's Melina Weiskup has the story.
Homeland Security Secretary Mayorkas saying that domestic extremism is the most serious threat that the nation faces right now, pointing to the January 6th Capitol breach. But Congress members quickly turned the topic of conversation to the border surge.
The President's overdue message yesterday to migrants to not make the journey to our southern border is certainly better late than never.
But he says that words alone cannot stem the border surge. Mayorkas confirmed that the influx is likely to reach a 20-year high.
Because you can see how quickly that the border can get out of hand. It's an hour-by-hour, day-by-day, week-by-week battle down there.
Still insistent that there is no crisis, Mayorkas asserted that the border is secure. That's even as FEMA is there to help get it under control.
There are 2 long-term solutions, both of which the president has acted upon.
One Democrat from Michigan, frustrated with the politicization of immigration, says she can't spot a long-term solution in Biden's proposed immigration bill.
Any bill that comes across, any final bill, actually shows us how the system is going to reform, not just temporarily change.
Mayorkas said they do have a process for testing and quarantining immigrants, but he didn't deny that some who have tested positive have been released.
And we did not have the opportunity to test them. We have addressed that situation.
Foreign nationals who test positive for COVID-19 to enter our country. That's what you're saying, I guess?
Congressman, we do the best we can in everything that we do.
Mayorkas claims the Biden administration inherited a broken system, saying the absence of humanitarian policy is the real crisis.
Infants to the age of 5 that come into the border. I confronted a situation of 3 young siblings under the ages of 10.
Representative Ted Budd tells NTD the surge in unaccompanied children at the border is not a coincidence, but a strategy of cartels to overwhelm the border agents.
They're sent here to consume our resources, which allows other illegals to come through that are either bringing in sex trafficking and narcotics. So it's a drug cartel strategy.
And the House is set to vote Thursday on an immigration bill that is likely to pass in the House, but likely to stall in the Senate, with the filibuster being used as a fallback for Senate Republicans to block the Democrats' agenda. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Melina Weiskup, NTD News.
Senator Shelley Moore Capito led 40 of her Republican colleagues to sign a letter. They're asking the Government Accountability Office to say if Biden suspending funding and construction of the southern border wall is justified under federal law. And Texas Governor Abbott is expanding Operation Lone Star. It now cracks down on human trafficking involved in illegal border crossings. NTD's Kevin Hogan has more.
The governor of Texas, Greg Abbott, announced the state is expanding a program that combats the smuggling of drugs and people into the state. As part of the expansion of Operation Lone Star, public safety troopers and Texas Rangers will interview unaccompanied minors who cross the border. Officers will ask them questions designed to tell if they're victims of human trafficking. This way, they'll get information that will help them arrest the traffickers.
Director McCraw and his staff with the Texas Department of Public Safety and others have been engaged in this process of trying to root out the human trafficking element. But let's clarify something that you said that I disagree with. The Biden administration opened the floodgates to any child who wants to come across the border is going to be able to come across the border. And I know from what's going on the ground, they are completely ill-prepared for this.
The White House did not immediately reply to a request for comment on this, but Press Secretary Jen Psaki responded to a reporter's question at a briefing. He asked how Biden's "Don't Come Over" message is being communicated to the migrants who are already en route to the U.S.
Secretary Mayorkas did an interview just yesterday. You've heard Roberta Jacobson speak to this, and a range of officials beyond them who are speaking directly with countries, working in partnership with them, speaking directly through channels that are in the region, that now is not the time to come. The border is not open. This is a treacherous journey. The vast majority of people will be certainly sent back on their journey, and that's the message we're sending.
Governor Abbott is making a request of the Biden administration. He wants permission for the Texas Department of Public Safety, or DPS, to access the facility that holds minors in Dallas. That way, DPS would be able to interview unaccompanied minors. Abbott is also asking to enter other federal facilities in Texas.
These sites are a direct result of President Biden's reckless open border policies that are causing a surge in border crossings and cartel activity. The administration has yet to provide answers that Texans deserve. How long will these children be here? What countries have they come from, and what COVID variants have they been exposed to?
Texas launched Operation Lone Star earlier this month. It sends air, land, marine, and tactical border security assets to high-threat areas. It's an effort to combat the smuggling operations of Mexican cartels. Abbott said he expects the number of migrants coming to the border to increase in the short term. Kevin Hogan, NTD News.
Former President Trump again recommended that Americans get the COVID-19 vaccine. This time he called on his voters. NTD's Miguel Moreno has that story and updates on the pandemic.
It's not the first time Trump's recommended the vaccine to Americans. Seems obvious considering that he helped roll out the vaccine in record time. But this time he called on his supporters in an interview with Fox News. Here's that clip.
I would recommend it, and I would recommend it to a lot of people that don't want to get it, and a lot of those people voted for me, frankly. But, you know, again, we have our freedoms, and we have to live by that, and I agree with that also.
Now, like you heard, Trump's not calling to an end to vaccine resistance or calling his supporters skeptical. He just recommended the vaccine and agreed that Americans have the freedom to choose whether they want it or not. Let's touch on a JAMA network study released Tuesday. Turns out the number of infections may be much higher than the data shows. It estimates that up to 16.5 million people in the U.S. may have had an asymptomatic, undiagnosed case of the virus as of September last year. They got that estimate based on information from September. That's more than twice the reported amount that month. We're not sure why this study was published now, more than 5 months later. So we contacted the author of the study to find an answer, but we haven't heard back. So over 534,000 people have died of the CCP virus in the U.S. And FEMA plans to lift some of that burden, like paying for funerals. FEMA's acting director says they'll start the program early next month.
Our focus is empathy. When we talk about individuals that have lost loved ones, we want to make sure that we do it in an empathetic way. And while we've done funeral assistance in disasters, we've never done anything at this scale or scope. We are currently focused on training our call center staff and finalizing our policy.
He says they got a $50 billion payment in that last COVID package to help with this program. That's it for this roundup. Back to you, Steph.
Thanks, Miguel. And the next stimulus checks are on the way. About 90 million payments have been disbursed so far. The first group to get the money includes people who provided direct deposit information to the IRS on recent tax returns or on the IRS website. About 150,000 paper checks have also been mailed. In all, about $242 billion have been paid. Individuals earning under $75,000 and married couples making less than $150,000 get the full amount, $1,400 each. And you can check the status of your payment using the Get My Payment tool on irs.gov. A coalition of parents are suing Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology for their admissions process. The top-ranked public high school in the U.S. recently changed the process to be more equitable. NTD's Christina Kim has that story.
The Coalition for TJ is suing Thomas Jefferson High School for Science and Technology for their new admissions practices. They claim the changes were, quote, specifically intended to reduce the percentage of Asian American students with the ultimate goal of racially balancing the school according to the racial demographics of the county. An attorney for the Pacific Legal Foundation calls this unconstitutional. In October, the Fairfax County School Board voted to eliminate the admissions test and waive the $100 application fee. To boost diversity, they adopted a holistic review process and raised the minimum GPA requirement to 3.5. Students will complete a problem-solving essay and a student portrait sheet. According to the lawsuit, the class of 2024 is 73% Asian American, nearly 18% white, and over 3% Latino. The number of black students is 10 or fewer and is classified too small to report. Parents spoke out against the move.
The authorities are stirring up hate against Asian Americans. Hoping to simply suppress the number of Asian American students will fix the overdue problem of the school board's failure.
Right now, America faces a growing tide of racism against Asian Americans.
The lawsuit cites board meetings where leaders allegedly compared test preparation to illegal performance enhancement drugs and referenced stereotypes of Asian parents pushing their children to academic success at all costs.
TJ was painted as a school for privileged families, despite the fact that the majority of TJ families are immigrants who came to the U.S. with very little in their hands and pockets.
Wai Hua-chin is the chapter president for the Chinese American Citizens Alliance, the oldest Chinese civil rights group in the U.S. She and the group denounce these practices as anti-Asian. The group says real equity is equal rights under the law, not equal outcome.
There's nothing called too many Asians. This is something that people have to stop thinking about.
She says these practices are using the banner of equity and inclusion, but actually fosters racist tactics often used by critical race theory. The group calls this a, quote, hateful, divisive, manipulative fraud that replaces communist class struggle with race struggle.
If we stop judging our people as people and individuals, but only as their groups, we will never be able to unify and do what is right and just.
The president of the TJ Alumni Action Group supports the new changes to the admissions. She spoke to Fox and said parents, quote, shouldn't fear an even playing field, and that by filing the lawsuit, parents admit that the current system gives advantages to their children. Christina Kim, NTD News.
We reached out to Fairfax County Public Schools. They say the new admissions criteria will improve the school's diversity and access, and that the process continues to be, quote, race neutral and merit-based. And Florida is saying no to critical race theory. Instead, the governor wants schools to teach what he calls foundational concepts. Governor Ron DeSantis announces that civic curricula in Florida will, quote, expressly exclude unsanctioned narratives like critical race theory. He says there's no room in Florida's classrooms for unsubstantiated theories, and that it's not worth any taxpayer money to teach children to, quote, hate their country and to hate each other. DeSantis also vows to develop a world-class civics education in Florida. He announced this at a press conference in his state earlier today. And victims of communist China held a protest in Washington, D.C. today, calling to boycott the 2022 Beijing Winter Olympics. It happened ahead of Secretary of State Antony Blinken's first meeting with Chinese diplomats.
A group of victims representing Uyghurs, Tibetans, Hong Kong, and Chinese democracy advocates launched a campaign in front of the White House on Wednesday. They hope to pressure President Joe Biden and State Secretary Antony Blinken to boycott the Beijing 2022 Winter Olympics because of the Chinese Communist Party's massive human rights violations.
I can't describe what I've been through. I was beaten, I was tortured, I was raped for multiple times, gang rapes.
Beijing is the first city to win the right to host both a summer and winter Olympics. Victims who fled communist China's detention centers find it unacceptable. The regime's appalling human rights record has lasted for decades.
It's almost unimaginable that the Olympic Committee decided to host the 2022 Winter Olympics in China, given that the human rights and conditions inside Tibet are terrible.
The protest happened in Washington, D.C., one day ahead of the Biden administration's first meeting with the Chinese diplomats. Beijing's human rights abuses is expected to be one of their major topics.
Withdrawing from the Olympics is a major statement to be making. It is, the actions committed by the Chinese government could no longer be ignored.
In the face of growing criticism, the International Olympic Committee says it does not have the influence to solve political issues in China. It does, however, hold observer status at the United Nations. Reporting by Lin Lin, NTD News.
Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Wednesday urged Seoul to stand up to shared values together to prevent a dangerous erosion of democracy in the region. He also accused North Korea of committing systemic and widespread abuses against its own people.
U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken Wednesday openly pressed South Korea to join hands in keeping Beijing in check and working to end Pyongyang's human rights violations. Blinken is visiting South Korea alongside Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin. It's part of a first overseas trip by top-level members of President Biden's administration. The trip is aimed at rebuilding U.S. alliances in Asia and comes in the face of growing assertiveness by Beijing. At talks with South Korean Foreign Minister Jung Eui-yong in Seoul, Blinken said, China is using coercion and aggression to systematically erode autonomy in Hong Kong, undercut democracy in Taiwan, abuse human rights in Xinjiang and Tibet, and assert maritime claims in the South China Sea that violate international law. And the authoritarian regime in North Korea continues to commit systemic and widespread abuses against its own people. We must stand with people demanding their fundamental rights and freedoms, and against those who repress them. In the same statement, both officials agreed to work together to resolve North Korea's nuclear and missile issues, calling them a priority. Austin held separate talks with South Korean Defense Minister Seo-uk. Seoul's defense ministry says Austin pledged to keep providing the country with the U.S.'s nuclear umbrella, among other deterrence measures. The ministry said both sides also reaffirmed their shared goal of complete denuclearization and lasting peace on the Korean peninsula.
Given the unprecedented challenges posed by both the Democratic People's Republic of Korea and China, the U.S.-ROK alliance has never been more important.
South Korea's foreign ministry said they also agreed to continue discussions to arrange a summit between South Korean President Moon Jae-in and Biden as early as possible, and to coordinate on North Korea, even while Washington's policy review is underway. The trip to Japan and Korea comes ahead of Blinken's first in-person meetings with Chinese counterparts, planned for later this week in Alaska.
And coming up, a fireworks explosion left 2 people dead. It prompted an evacuation. And today is the deadline to collect signatures for California's recall effort against its governor. The petition has surpassed 2 million names. That and more on NTD News. An explosion of illegal fireworks erupted in a Southern California neighborhood on Tuesday. NTD's Ani Wang has the details.
A large amount of fireworks were ignited in a Southern California neighborhood on Tuesday afternoon, causing an explosion and large structure fire. Twitter footage shows plumes of smoke and fireworks in the Ontario neighborhood. The Ontario Fire Department said the blast killed at least 2 people, as well as a dog. 3 people also suffered injuries and 2 homes were destroyed. Residents in the neighborhood told us they were at home when they heard the explosion.
When I heard the first explosion, and I thought it was a big semi-truck that went inside the house.
Just heard a big loud boom, and I thought it might have been a sonic boom or something.
Firefighters were on site, and officials said that residents were evacuated. A bomb squad was dispatched to clear the area of any additional explosives. The area is under investigation. Reporting by Annie Wang, NTD News, California.
California's recall effort has surpassed 2 million signatures as of the cutoff date today. NTD's Eileen Ang has the scoop on the governor's counter-campaign and what Californians think of it.
The Recall Gavin 2020 campaign has now surpassed 2 million signatures as of March 17th, the deadline.
Gavin Newsom brought this upon himself. He didn't have to lock down 40 million Californians for a year. He chose to do so. He let out the inmates and put us all under house arrest during this pandemic.
The governor responded to the recall with his own counter-campaign, Stop the Republican Recall, on Monday. During a press conference, Newsom addressed the recall effort.
You look at the original sponsors of it. You have someone who's a member, proud member of the 3 Percenters, an alt-right militia group. Others that are devout conspiracy theorists that believe in QAnon.
However, the campaign's leaders say that isn't the case.
We're every name in the book they can come up with trying to label us, and that's nonsensical. We're Californians. 38% of the people who have signed our petition are Democrats and declined to states, third party, Green members, Libertarians, Reform Party. This is a California movement.
People are divided. Some back Newsom, while others point out his flaws. One comment under his tweet says, "Both sides of the aisle want you gone." Another commented, "This is actually incompetence versus competence."
This is the largest referendum in the history of America where people have had to sign a petition, have their names verified by 58 different county registrar of voters offices. And, you know, it's been an awesome process. It's been a daunting process, but the people got this done.
The campaign will not be endorsing any candidate. They officially wish all candidates the best of luck. Eileen Ang, NTD News, California.
New York City is set to increase police presence in Asian neighborhoods. That's in response to the recent shootings in Atlanta. Mayor Bill de Blasio says the NYPD is gathering more information from Atlanta so it can be better prepared. NTD's Don Tran reports.
Major deployment of NYPD counterterrorism forces in predominantly Asian communities, following the horrific shootings in Atlanta, Georgia. The NYPD Critical Response Command placed members in Chinatown, Flushing, and Sunset Park. New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio made the announcement in a press briefing.
And wherever we get any reports of concern, we're going to make sure to have real strong presence. Of course, as usual, NYPD is assessing the pattern of what we saw in Atlanta, looking for anything that might tell us additional information we need to know here.
In Atlanta, Georgia, a 21-year-old man shot and killed 8 people. 6 of them were Asian women. The shooting suspect is now in police custody. Mayor de Blasio called the attack domestic terrorism and an act of Asian hate.
People killed in their workplaces, going about their lives simply because of their ethnicity.
But Atlanta police reported the suspect said his actions were not racially motivated. Officials said the investigation is ongoing, and they will not make a determination on the motive behind the attacks at this time. Don Tran, NTD News, New York.
New York City is coming back to life. That means subways are getting fuller. NTD's Arian Pazdar has the story from the Big Apple's underground system.
On Friday, the MTA recorded its highest ridership since the start of the pandemic. Almost 2 million people were transported. New Yorkers are getting vaccinated, things are opening up, and fortunately people are getting back to work. But after a year of lockdowns and stay-at-home orders, it's almost strange to see that. Take a look at our footage from this week's trains. Here you can see the 7 train coming into Manhattan on Wednesday morning. It's clearly fuller than it used to be, but there might be another factor for the overall high number in the past few days. Subways used to be closed for 4 hours every night for cleaning. That was cut short to 2 hours recently. The people we spoke with all had similar opinions on the importance of the city's subway system.
It's very important, honestly. With me, for my job, I use it a lot. I use it day to day to get around.
It's very important in terms of school and work and just life for almost all of New Yorkers.
We definitely rely on it, especially a lot of us real New Yorkers, we don't drive, we always take the subway.
The 2 train was also quite full on Wednesday morning, compared to a few weeks ago at least, when most of the seats were empty. Throughout the pandemic, Congress had to help out the MTA with $14 billion. Although ridership is clearly going up, it's still not even half of what it used to be. The MTA used to transport 5 million people every single day. They say it'll take years to recover. Arian Pazdar, NTD News, New York.
It's St. Patrick's Day in New York City. The pandemic toned down the festivities quite a bit, but people and restaurants are doing what they can to celebrate. NTD's Don Tran has the details.
Even at this stage of the virus pandemic, restrictions are still being brought down on holidays like St. Patrick's Day across the country. But here in New York City, there are some people out here who are willing to show their holiday spirit, and some establishments, like this one behind me, is showing its love and enthusiasm for the occasion. A group sporting different shades of green wandered through the streets of the Big Apple. One said they go to New York City every year to celebrate St. Patrick's Day.
We bar hop mainly, and we just honestly walk around the streets, and usually with the parade, and there's a lot of other people that to celebrate with. But we mainly just love the city environment for the day. I think it's really exciting.
And if there's any restaurant that celebrates St. Patrick's Day, look no further than the Molly Wee. The Irish pub is just a couple blocks from Madison Square Garden and has been around since 1980.
Basically, we're serving good food, corned beef and cabbage, Irish lamb stew, all the Irish specialties, and we're trying to do it in a safe and whatever way we can do it today.
They're currently at 35% indoor dining capacity and will go up to 50% on Friday. Angela, the owner of the pub, says she's glad her business survived the pandemic.
Well, it's just a day of remembering Ireland, and all my family's in Ireland, so St. Patrick was our patron saint, and we're just very proud of that fact.
She also said she's looking forward to getting to 100% capacity and for things to go back to normal. Don Tran, NTD News, New York.
Coming up, in an apparent crackdown on online privacy and free speech, Communist China bans U.S. messaging app Signal. The app allows encrypted messaging among users. Parts of China's Yangtze River are drying up so much they look more like a desert rather than a river. That and more on NTD News.
If you're like me, and I think it's actually most of us, then you're getting really fed up with the nonsense going on inside the banking system. I mean, we've worked hard our entire lives to retire comfortably. We just recovered from the crash of 2008, and it seems like it's about to happen all over again. Look at the too-big-to-fail banks. They're only getting bigger as the Fed hands them trillions of dollars daily, while simple folks like you and me, we're only getting the short end of the stick. That's why I'm glad I found this book called The Bank Failure Survival Guide. Give us a call, and we'll send you a free copy with no obligations whatsoever. Just one American to another, telling you about some options that you might not have considered. Call 866-239-2619 today for your free copy of The Bank Failure Survival Guide. That's 239-2619.
When you look at TV networks in America, a soundbite and fight-it-out culture prevails on news and commentary programs. As a Canadian, I'm fascinated with America, and I wanted to offer American thought leaders an opportunity to share their thoughts in a deep dive format where we can explore their ideas together. And so American Thought Leaders was born. The world's most brilliant thinkers believed that open discourse was the key to greatness. However, all around the world, we see that discourse is being stifled and political agendas have subverted media. The Epoch Times launched its Global Thought Leaders program to bring back this great tradition of free thought. As the host of American Thought Leaders, every week I interview some of the most intriguing minds on the most pressing issues of our time. Be sure to check out our new episodes every week.
Another private messaging app is banned in China. This time it's Signal. The US-based app encrypts users' conversations. Here's more from NTD's Tiffany Meyer.
In an apparent move to crack down on free speech, China seems to have blocked private messaging app Signal. Signal was founded in the US. It was one of the few remaining messaging apps in China that allowed encrypted messaging. It uses end-to-end encryption for its services and prevents third parties from seeing conversations or listening in on calls. On Tuesday, Chinese users noticed messages failing to send and calls not going through. The app saw a recent surge in popularity among those concerned about privacy. Though Signal user numbers in the country are still low compared to Chinese messaging app WeChat, but politically sensitive content on WeChat is often censored. Authorities have also detained users for posting about subjects forbidden by the state. Asked about Signal's apparent ban, a spokesperson for China's Ministry of Foreign Affairs said that he was not aware of the situation. China has a history of censorship and using it to shape public opinion. Limiting private discussions is just one of its tactics. Last month, China banned private discussion app Clubhouse. Similar to Signal, it also allowed for a degree of digital privacy. American drug maker Pfizer reveals plans to stop producing biosimilar products in China. To complete the shift, it's also selling its facility assets there to a Chinese company. Pfizer said on Wednesday the assets will be purchased by WuXi Biologics, China's largest pharmaceutical research and development company. The value of the deal is unknown, and it's unclear what products will be made in the faculty after the transaction. Biosimilar products are made from living organisms. They are more expensive than medicines with chemical ingredients. Pfizer explained the site was supposed to make 3 biosimilar products for the Chinese market, adding that the company evaluated the potential for making other products there, but, quote, none reached the level of activity for the scale of the site. The Chinese company said the deal would help it meet surging demands for drugs. WuXi also provides AstraZeneca and the University of Oxford with CCP virus vaccine substances. An expanse of China's longest river near the city of Wuhan has dried up so much that it looks almost like a desert. The Yangtze River's dry riverbed is nearly 90 miles long. A video of the dry riverbed is going viral online. Fish remains are seen lying on sand. But less than a year ago, flooding within the river basin displaced millions of residents there. Renowned Chinese professor Huang Wangli predicted that the Three Gorges Dam built on the Yangtze River would lead to disaster. There will be environmental degradation, and shipping will become more difficult. Some of his predictions already came true. As the Yangtze River suffers from both severe flooding and severe drought, NTD cannot independently verify if the dam caused these to happen. Germany-based hydrologist Wang Weiluo told the Chinese-language edition of the Epoch Times that the Chinese regime built over 100,000 reservoirs after seizing power, but flooding has only become more frequent and damaging. He added saying what the Communist Party did was against Mother Nature, but the Chinese people will be the victims of potential environmental catastrophe.
This year's Academy Awards ceremony will not be broadcast in China. The Chinese regime banned it after 2 China-related films received nominations. NTD's Xiang Bin has more.
This year's Oscar nominations were announced on Monday. 2 China-related films, Do Not Split and Nomadland, were nominated. The Chinese Communist Party, or CCP's propaganda department, then issued a ban on live broadcasts of the ceremony. It also ordered all state media to downplay the ceremony. That's because the 2 films are considered sensitive for the CCP. Do Not Split is nominated for the Best Short Documentary. It records many landmark events of the pro-democracy movement in Hong Kong in recent years. It has interviews with demonstrators and scholars at the scene. And Nomadland is nominated for 6 awards, including Best Director and Best Film. The film's director, Chloe Zhao, made history earlier this year. She is the first Asian woman to win the Golden Globe Award for Best Director. Chinese state-owned media initially celebrated Zhao, but shortly afterwards they found out that Zhao said in a 2013 interview that communist China is a place full of lies everywhere. Chinese state media then turned against her, and the regime banned her film in China. After the CCP banned live broadcasts for this year's Academy Awards ceremony, Chinese internet users reacted with heated discussions. One of them wrote, quote, "The Chinese regime gets terribly scared at everything, even at things that are only a little bit unfavorable to them. They are afraid of being affected. They have no confidence." Xiong Bin, NTD News.
Still to come, Disney's CEO sets a date to reopen California's 2 Disney parks. It follows new state guidelines. And studies say that the fish you think you are buying may be something else entirely. But how common is the swap? Find out more on NTD News. Tired of the city? If you're a professional looking for more space, affordable homes, and easy access to the outdoors, this might be the opportunity for you. Dozens of U.S. cities are paying remote workers to move to their cities. NTD's Phil Zoe has the story.
Cities across the U.S., including Buffalo, New York, Savannah, Georgia, and even Honolulu, Hawaii, are paying remote workers to move to their cities. The offers can go up to $16,000 on the high end, ranging from cash incentives to tax credit and forgivable loans. MakeMyMove.com has compiled over 30 offers where you can review the programs, requirements, and even apply. So far, interested remote workers tend to come from expensive areas and often work in tech, sales, and marketing. The company said remote workers are extremely valuable because the new cities will get the workers' tax revenue and spending in the community. A program in Chattanooga, Tennessee is attracting software engineers with $10,000 towards a new home. Tulsa, Oklahoma is offering cash and memberships to co-working office spaces. For short-term relocations, Honolulu is offering a free flight for a 1-month stay. Applicants will have to volunteer at least 15 hours at local startups and nonprofits. Phil Zoe, NTD News.
Is the tuna you bought at the supermarket actually tuna? NTD's Sapphire Corder tells us more about fish fraud and mislabeling in the U.S.
When we buy fish, we want to get what we pay for. That's part of the reason why the FDA has such specific seafood labeling requirements. However, studies show that anywhere between 15 to 50% of fish is mislabeled. Cheaper, commonplace fish are sometimes sold as more expensive and rare fish. The mislabeling could be a mistake. Fish sometimes change hands 5 times before ending up in a grocery store. And sometimes fish are called different names depending on the location. But claims that half of fish are mislabeled might be an exaggeration. That may be because many studies target problem species or have small sample sizes.
If you have a study that is 600 samples and it oversamples a specific type of fish at a specific restaurant, and then you use that as a representative of one country, well, then you get further and further statistically away from accuracy.
Gibbons says laws are in place to prevent mislabeling and fraud. The problem is enforcement. But some groups do work to prevent mislabeling. One supplier says the FDA and U.S. Customs is constantly supervising him to make sure fish are properly labeled. If they want to add an overseas supplier, they must notify the FDA and check at least 5 deliveries to make sure no species substitution has occurred. After that, his company performs random search shipments.
That it is always in our best interest to follow the law and to make sure that we sustain our fish so that, our children and our children's children could have something to sell. And
he says that mislabeling is much more of a problem at the restaurant level, where people aren't as educated on which type of fish is which. So while seafood fraud does occur, if you buy tuna at the supermarket, it's probably tuna. Sapphire Quarter, NTD News, New York.
Alcohol-free bars are opening across the United States. The surge is responding to a growing number of people experimenting with sober living. That's as health and wellness trends like Dry January and Sober October gain traction. NTD's Andrew Thomas has the story.
There may be something missing on St. Patrick's Day from a new kind of bar in the U.S. booze. Aimed at the growing number of people exploring sobriety, alcohol-free bars are serving cocktails without the extra kick. At Sans Bar in Austin, customers are enjoying live music and drinks, like Rosemary Ginger Mules and non-alcoholic IPAs.
A lot of people just want to drink less. A lot of people are just wanting to socialize without having the hangover, or without having any alcohol, or less alcohol.
Sober bars aren't a new phenomenon. They first appeared in the 19th century as part of the temperance movement. More recently, abstinence challenges like Dry January and a growing interest in health and wellness are credited for the trend. An explosion of new products is also fueling sales. Chicago's Ritual Zero Proof, which opened in 2019, makes no alcohol whiskey, gin, and tequila. Beverage behemoth Anheuser-Busch introduced alcohol-free Budweiser Zero last year. Douglas Waters opened Spirited Away in November, a New York store that sells non-alcoholic beer, wine, and spirits.
For a lot of people, soda and juice meet their needs if they're not drinking, but a lot of people also want something that feels a little bit more grown up.
Many of his customers are sober, and others are pregnant or have health issues. Some are training for marathons, while some just want to cut back. Andrew Thomas, NTD News.
Disney CEO says its 2 theme parks in California will reopen on April 30th, but they'll only be at 15% capacity. Walt Disney World in Florida already opened 9 months ago. The CEO told CNBC there's no shortage of visitors at the Florida location, and the California parks can open with the proper health precautions too. California's new guidelines allow theme parks to open with between 15 and 35% capacity, depending on local virus spread. Disney had to slim down its workforce over the past year, affecting tens of thousands of jobs. And coming up, some robbers in the UK will need to wear GPS tracking tags for up to a year after getting out of prison. It's a world-first scheme to prevent reoffending. And uniquely colorful islands in South Korea are attracting visitors. Everything there is purple, from plant life to buildings and even locals' clothes. That and more in just a minute.
Do you have a life insurance policy you no longer need? Now you can sell your policy, even a term policy, for an immediate cash payment. Call Coventry Direct to learn more.
We thought we had planned carefully for our retirement.
But we quickly realized we needed a way to supplement our income.
Our friends sold their policy to help pay their medical bills. And that got me thinking. Maybe selling our policy could help with our retirement.
I was skeptical, so I did some research and called Coventry Direct. They explained life insurance is a valuable asset that can be sold.
We learned we could sell all of our policy or keep part of it with no future payments. Who knew? We sold our policy. Now we can relax and enjoy our retirement as we had planned.
If you have $100,000 or more of life insurance, you may qualify to sell your policy. Don't cancel or let your policy lapse without finding out what it's worth. Visit CoventryDirect.com to find out if your policy qualifies, or call 1-800-509-8500. Coventry Direct, redefining insurance.
British government's new crime bill is one step closer to becoming law. Politicians backed the legislation on Tuesday night. Here's NTD's Jane Werrell with more.
MPs backed the government's new crime bill 359 to 263 in its second reading, a majority of 96. This massive piece of new crime legislation includes longer sentences and gives more powers to the police. The bill includes dozens of new measures, including a maximum of 2 years for assaulting an emergency worker, widening laws to tackle abusive adults in positions of trust, life in prison for people who've murdered children, and up to 10 years for criminally damaging a memorial. But it's under particular scrutiny for its rules around protests. The legislation says police could prosecute activists for causing serious annoyance and restrict the length of protests and noise levels. Labour voted against the legislation, while Conservatives didn't vote against it. Some expressed unease about the widened rules around protests, like former Prime Minister and Home Secretary Theresa May.
I absolutely accept that the police have got for certain challenges, for example, when people glue themselves to vehicles or the gates of Parliament. But freedom of speech is an important right in our democracy. However annoying or uncomfortable sometimes that might be. And I know there will be people who will have seen scenes of protests and will have said, why isn't the government doing something? To which the answer, in many cases, may simply be because we live in a democratic, free society.
The Home Secretary says laws should be reformed because of significant changes in protest tactics in recent years. Jane Werrell, NTD News, London.
In a world-first scheme, some burglars and thieves in the UK will need to wear GPS tags for up to a year after being released from prison. It's a government move to crack down on neighbourhood crime.
The government will fit prolific burglars, robbers and thieves with GPS tags. It's a world's first scheme to prevent reoffending. Those who were jailed for 1 year or more will get them automatically after release. They need to wear them 24/7 for up to 12 months. Minister of Crime and Policing Kit Malthouse said, "Tagging these prolific offenders so we know where they are 24 hours a day should be powerful persuasion to change their ways and help police find and charge them if they don't." After a crime takes place, police will then be able to check the location history of tagged individuals. The government said more than half of those convicted of theft and burglary will reoffend within a year. The scheme will launch in 6 police force areas next month. 13 more will follow in the autumn.
The UK government on Tuesday announced a new nuclear weapons policy to increase the stockpile of warheads and use them as a deterrent for cyber and artificial intelligence threats.
Prime Minister Boris Johnson announces that the government will invest an extra £24 million in defence. The money will be used to modernise the UK's armed forces and to renew the nuclear deterrent.
The new money will be focused on mastering the emerging technologies that are transforming warfare, reflecting the premium placed on speed and deployment and technical skill.
In an integrated review published on Tuesday, it says the UK will not use or threaten to use nuclear weapons, but it states, "However, we reserve the right to review this assurance if the future threat of weapons of mass destruction, such as chemical and biological capabilities, or emerging technologies that could have a comparable impact, makes it necessary." The UK will also increase the stockpile of nuclear warhead from 180 to a maximum of 260, a rise of 40%. A fleet of 4 Dreadnought-class nuclear submarines will replace the current Vanguard-class submarines in the 2030s, expected to cost £31 billion. In order to maintain the deterrent, the UK will not give public figures for the country's stockpile, deployed warhead or deployed missile numbers. The review also states, the UK's nuclear weapons are operationally independent and only the Prime Minister can authorise their use. We would consider using nuclear weapons only in extreme circumstances of self-defence, including the defence of our NATO allies.
The Royal Shakespeare Company has developed a virtual performance based on A Midsummer Night's Dream. It's unlike any Shakespeare production you've ever seen.
Follow me. Shakespeare is going virtual. Dream is an online event by the Royal Shakespeare Company. It's based on the play A Midsummer Night's Dream and uses 3D video game technology. Taking elements of the bard's original vision, it immerses the audience in a virtual landscape. The RSC's literary manager explains.
We've taken characters from the play,
we've taken some of the language from the play, and we've created a new story. I think in the spirit that a radical playwright would approve of.
The 7-strong cast play virtual sprites that guide the audience through the experience. Actor Maggie Bain describes the performance process.
We're kind of puppeteering at times, we are performing at times. There's lots of different things that the technology is giving us that we have to be aware of.
The live-streamed event is free to view, but a £10 Audience Plus ticket lets viewers become a Firefly and interact with the cast. Hill believes that a global audience with interactive participation has a future in theatre.
So it's been unbelievably exciting to work in this way and to find these new tools to perform with.
Dream runs till Saturday, March the 20th.
500 drones took to the skies above Dublin as Ireland celebrated St. Patrick's Day. The ultra-lightweight purpose-built drones weigh 3/4 of a pound. They weaved into different shapes and changed colors as part of a show called the Orchestra of Light. The show was organized by Tourism Ireland, Dublin City Council, and the St. Patrick's Festival. The eye-catching drone choreography was designed by festival designer Aidan Grinnell. Around the world, St. Patrick's Day celebrations are quieter due to the pandemic, but 670 landmarks in over 60 countries across the world will still light up green to celebrate the influence of Irish culture. And next up, a small herd of goats gets stuck on a roof in Colombia. Think we're kidding around? Well, take a look.
That goat trying to graze on the roof in northern Colombia seems just as confused as the onlookers. Officials don't know how the goats got there. They didn't seem to be able to get down. One tourist recorded the rescue effort after firefighters were called on the scene. At first, they tried to guide the goats to come down on their own, but that didn't work. Next, they managed to lasso a few smaller goats and return them to safety uninjured.
We've never seen such cases here before. We've rescued snakes, porcupines, opossums and other kinds of wild animals, but we have never rescued goats from a roof before.
Firemen carried off the goat across two shoulders technique superbly. Once the smaller members of the herd were down, the goats decided they didn't want to butt heads with the firemen any longer. With the cheering crowd as encouragement, almost every goat left the rooftop. Some of them needed more coaxing. All of the goats were soon returned to the wild.
Purple houses, purple bridges, and even purple rice. In South Korea, there is a cluster of islands where almost everything is purple. Tourists are eager to experience the magic.
Elderly women dressed in purple, tending lavender fields. Roofs colored in different shades of violet, and purple footbridges connecting the 3 islands. Restaurants even offer purple rice and serve food on purple plates.
It's amazing and looks like fairy tales and magic. As I'm looking, the grandmas are all wearing purple clothes. It's very dreamy.
The tranquil islands have a little over 100 residents and are now a popular tourist attraction. Since 2015, the county government has invested over $4 million to transform the islands. And it's been a success. The campaign has drawn in close to 500,000 visitors since it started in 2019.
Old people like us have lived a secluded life since all of the young people left the town. But after we planted lavender, I'm glad to see young people and my kids are coming. They're all like my grandchildren.
The theme was inspired by the native balloon flower. Some villagers have embraced it with delight.
In the morning, I dress up in purple from head to toe, even including my underwear and shoes, and that makes me happy.
Visitors are allowed free entry to the islands, as long as they wear purple.
And that's all for today's news. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Stephanie Cox.
Don't miss out on important news. Our videos are being deleted. So if you don't want to be cut off from honest news, take a moment to sign up for our newsletter at newsletter.ntd.com so you don't lose access to NTD.